Hey, welcome all to H&D Abroad. Welcome to our home. I am Herman. This is the beautiful and lovely D, and we welcome you to our channel and welcome you on this beautiful Saturday.
All right. Our channel is all about our move abroad process and the big and small details, like the research, scouting trips that we're planning, because we're getting ready to go on a whole new series of scouting trips, and introducing you all to the people that we're meeting along the way, or that are making a huge difference in what we understand about places we'd like to go, or that we think you might be interested in learning more about. So if that content is interesting to you, please feel free to
like this channel, like this video, like this video, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the share so that other people can have an opportunity to join in this conversation with us. We are community-based in our style and our approach because we want our experience to be a part of your learning experience, as hopefully one day as much as your experience has been a part of ours.
Absolutely.
We are growing because of our interaction with you all. This community is very important to us. So please join and be a part of our community, as well as be a part of our Patreon community, join up for our mailing list. It's never too late to say it, never too early to say it.
Absolutely.
Become part of our email list and give our shout outs for the day.
Yeah. Hey, servant teacher Nikki. Welcome, welcome. You all know we greet each other in the chat. Share where you are joining from. If you are joining us in the future, hello from the future. We hope that it is beautiful there, as beautiful as we want it to be or need it to be. Thank you, Tanya Brooks, for saying hello in the chat. So, pretty regularly, we circle back to a few topics. If there's a topic that you would like for us to touch on that we haven't, you can put that in the chat as well. But one that I think is super important is, are you moving abroad for your spouse? So those of you that know, we are married. We've been married for 25 years. We've been together almost 32. And so we've made a couple of moves, especially this last set of moves he did for me. I got a job. And we decided this time around that we would not be apart and that we would make the move together. We would make it with our children. And we learned some lessons from the 2 times we've had the opportunity to make a move, and what that move meant for us as a couple. And then how that has influenced opportunities we've had into the future, most recently this year, and how that has impacted our decision. So that is the focus of our time together today, is if you have considered moving abroad, and you feel that your partner or spouse is kind of maybe less than enthusiastic. They're not resistant. It's just new. It could just be that it's a new process. What can you do to check in with your partner along the way? So, hey, Lori Butler.
So, in this conversation, often is shared. We find out it's not always, it might be a little more balanced than we know, but often is shared are wives trying to convince their husbands to be open to the move abroad experience. What we found is there are probably equally as many husbands trying to encourage wives to do so. In the case of wives being the convincer, is often a case of dissatisfaction around the environment or work situation, or I hear the ladies use the desire for peace. In the situation where it's often husbands, there's some similarity to that. Husbands have often been around the world. They've done some traveling. A lot of guys who have military background and have seen the world and experienced it often are the ones who say, there's more we could do here. There's more to see here.
Right.
Lucky is the family where either simultaneously they are choosing to make that move abroad choice, or very openly are the couples to making that decision. There often is some level of apprehension, concern,
Right.
a lot of times misinformation about that process. But
What process?
About the process of moving to a strange place, an unknown place. There's certain the lack of familiarity with the culture of the world, which is interesting considering how diverse our country is. But what I find is we still live very, I don't want to say isolated, but we live in environments that we are familiar with. So even though we bump into people of different cultures, we don't often delve into their cultural backgrounds.
Right.
So when you're in somebody else's country, it's them and then you.
Yeah.
And as people of color, Black people in particular in this country, there's often a feeling of our being the minority stands out. And there may be a continued bit of discomfort with feeling even bigger a minority, because now it's more than just my color or my disadvantage. Now it's language and background. So those things bring a bit of apprehension.
Yeah. So kind of starting with the bottom line up front, we want to talk about, just the importance of, kind of keeping the information current. So the importance of mutual understanding and support. We want to balance our individual and our collective, kind of goals for the move abroad process. We definitely want to be talking about tips for handling culture shock together. Like, you're going to experience it separately, but, can we develop a strategy for addressing the different aspects of culture shock? Number 4 is ways to foster connection in new surroundings, individually and as a couple, and then maintaining open and regular check-ins for relationship health. What I am beginning to understand, and the first time we lived apart after getting married, a lot of this, I thought, once we handled that, we've made the decision that we were going to make the move, that, we don't need to rehash it. We got new issues and new problems. And this process, especially a move abroad process, is going to encourage more check-ins. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How are you adjusting? How are you being intentional about identifying, feeling isolated in a new community environment? How are you adjusting? People's sleep a lot can be disrupted. And so the encouragement is that there are aspects to this we're going to talk about today, but the importance is that if your partner if you recognize, if a Super Bowl win, your partner has a Super Bowl win and they are jumping up and down, excited, talking about it all the time. They have the classic signs of, I'm happy, I'm satisfied. This is
good for me.
This is good for me. Then and this move abroad process doesn't have all the same bells and whistles. Let's check in and check in with each other along the way. So I know we've got a couple of couples, several couples in the chat. So if you all want to chime in on, on that, please do. So the importance of mutual understanding and support.
One of the things that I think is a general concern for relationships, long-term relationships, is I think you get to a point where you take things for granted.
Okay.
Men in general, and these are generalities, so don't don't holler at me. Men in general are linear in our communication.
Mm-hmm.
If I've said it before, it applies today unless I say it's different today.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you I loved you on Monday, I still love you on Friday. Just because I didn't tell you Tuesday through Thursday doesn't mean I don't love you.
Okay.
That is the danger of that is that in that comfort we assume, and I think this applies to both partners, is we assume that the other person understands.
Mm-hmm.
When someone agrees to move into a new, uncomfortable, unfamiliar environment because I care for you.
Mm-hmm.
I've said to you, let's get it more close. I've said to you, we can go wherever.
Right.
As long as you don't send me and then don't come. because the bigger goal for me is that we're spending that time together, that we're together in the space. And unless the place feels highly uncomfortable for me or unsafe for me,
mm-hmm.
I can adjust.
Yeah.
I've lived in a variety of places. I'm used to having to move to unfamiliar spaces, so
right.
I can readjust.
Yeah.
But that doesn't apply to everybody.
Right.
And if we go to a place and I've said, yeah, I can do whatever, and we get there and you love it, and I've already said I can be wherever you are, your assumption is I love it too.
Mm-hmm.
You may not stop to think, how is this experience going for you? How is this interaction happening for you? I've not, to take the time to recognize in this conversation, there's a lot of when we go someplace, you go someplace to reduce stressors and anxieties and the burdens of some of the things that are the American culture. Will you recognize that your person may be still high level stress because you've seen them that level of stress so long?
Mm-hmm.
Will you recognize that they aren't decompressing in the same way that you are?
Yeah. When we were putting this together, the importance of mutual understanding and support to me
mm-hmm.
meant, I'm thinking logistics.
Okay.
So I'm inviting you into the decision-making process
mm-hmm.
when we're talking about a mutual understanding. I'm asking you to participate in a process that I'm excited about. And so, yeah, I'm going to get in the Facebook groups. I'm going to do the research. I'm going to reach out to, the local facilitators. I feel like one area that people in a relationship can be vulnerable is, and it's, if you're married, if you're partnered, is when you feel like I'm doing most of the work and my partner is just kind of going along. I feel like this touches that we need to have a heightened sense of awareness and definitely be concrete and specific on what you are asking, how you're asking your partner to contribute to
mm-hmm.
the process and what you need. Because if you're not getting it, I feel like this process just, things that you've kind of learned to work around as a couple, You got to be specific and intentional about.
And let's be specific, okay? Because I think our story is where we are. So
Absolutely.
So if you don't mind,
let's go.
Okay. I don't mind doing the work. There are a lot of us men in this move abroad process who have D's as wives. Watch them. I can name them. Aging Grateful, Our Black Utopia. I can go down the line. You go back and watch all the couples we interviewed, and you hear a assertive, I didn't say aggressive, so don't get tied up, an assertive group of research wives who are deep into the process. Once they get their feet in, they're not standing in the water, they are swimming. They are moving their hands in the swimming motion before they're even deep enough to be able to swim, which is a good thing. We are often husbands who say, once you're swimming, swim. The downside to that is it then becomes their process and not our process. Mm-hmm. And I have had to learn to say, what is it you want me to do?
Yeah.
So, because even in the midst of my process, you'll be doing a part of that process. and that's not.
Did you hear how diplomatic that was?
No. I mean, and I'm not offended by that, because I understand the significance in how you move.
Right.
So I'm not offended. Like, well, you asked me to do this while you're doing it. I don't have that issue.
Okay.
But some people do.
Yes.
So why are you asking me if you're going to do it anyway?
Okay.
And so I'm bringing that up just because that does exist for some people. I don't have that problem.
But you can tell we have been down this road together. Okay.
But it's important for me to understand that, hey, could you look into this? It doesn't matter to me if I come back that you've done some work in that, because then it's a different conversation, because I know that a lot of times you find information that what I consider the normal brain doesn't find. When we were first looking for homes, we were 2 years married, 3 years married. We had 2 different real estate agents simultaneously. Neither of them ever showed us the same. We gave them the same information, the same specs, the same criteria, the same financial budget. Neither of them ever showed us identical houses. Dee did her own research, and they never showed her any of the houses she found. Mm-hmm. So I know your ability to find the beyond. But in some people's cases, that becomes a bit of a tug and pull. Mm-hmm. If you're doing it, do it. If I'm doing it, let me do it. What are distinct roles? When you are dreaming together, when you are talking together, when you are engaging together, and there are tasks that we separately have, but it's not a separate task. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a better integration of the process.
Yes.
I've asked you to be a part of something that you did not initiate, mm-hmm. but I want it to be important to you because you've agreed.
I think, so we're going to give some tidbits, some tips along the way. I think one of the things that we have learned in our process is that I have to be specific about my request. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to have regular check-ins. So we have, when I shared this with a couple of people, they're like, y'all do what? Okay, so we have budget meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. We have budget meetings, and then we have budget check-ins. Mm-hmm. So we look at, we have structured our accounting so that there's, places for bills, and then places for the rest of the free floating money that happens. And so we check in with that mutual account because we are accountable to each other. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we do that. We do strategy at least once a week, We check in, you know, we've set the strategy. We check in about the strategy at least once a week. We check in about the budget because we use every dollar, probably, if not every day, every other day.
Correct.
We have built up that muscle. And I think the same has to happen with the Move Abroad process. Is it's overwhelming. What are the most important things? So if for your partner, it may not be a research the residency. It may be, I have found a few videos about these couple of places that I'm looking at. I found them helpful. You're welcome to do your research. Could you look at these and then we talk about it? The mutual understanding means that I feel like I am sharing at whatever river or stream level, because I saw Prophet Mother say,
yeah.
I try not to be the fire hydrant of information toward my partner. Okay. When I know whether I know it's an apprehension or not, I'm really paying attention to your body language. I'm really, and you have learned to more than just sit there. You've kind of said, let me, yes, we have a counseling background too. So let me make sure I understand what you're sharing with me. It is a communication loop that we've had to create.
I'm glad you said it like that, because my form of processing information is
frustrating.
Okay. And it's not, I'm not in the conversation. It's my brain is trying to absorb the information so that I can logically give back my input or rebuttal that makes sense. When we were dating, telling the business, when we were dating, occasionally, so very rarely, she would get upset with me. And you know, when you're 19, 20 years old, baby, what's wrong? And her answer would be, ladies and gentlemen, nothing. Now, even in my male ignorance, I knew nothing wasn't the correct answer. And we got to a point where I had to say, if you say nothing, then I have the freedom to walk away from this and it'd be nothing. If it's not nothing, at least tell me you aren't ready for that conversation so I can walk away until it's time. Or if you ever decide. I had to learn on this side to say, okay, give me a minute to think about that. Say that again, because my brain, and I haven't said this in a long time, I do a lot of talking in here that does not always reflect from here. And that's funny considering how much I talk. But you know, I have to visualize the information. The words become pictures for me, and her flood does not drown me, but sometimes I'm neck deep in water before I realize I'm swimming. And I have to be able to say, okay, hold on, turn the deluge down a little bit. Give me a prep, because her brain
catch up. I've been processing this. I've been thinking about this. I've been in community with other Black women who are talking about this. It is a part of the air I breathe.
This thought did not initiate in this statement. And I think that leads here. First, I want to say hello to all the people who've come in since the beginning. And to our new people. So Steve Sec Ops says, you know, what if your partner isn't interested in doing the research?
What if you're the guy?
Regardless, husbands and wives, I think you have to take time and ask what's going on. Sometimes support supersedes interest. And I don't want to say, in our self-desire for it to be as good as we believe it's going to be, Notice I didn't say selfish, but in our self desire to see things be as big, we hope that they're still coming along.
Mhm.
You've said to me, when I ask for this and you haven't done it, I assume that means you're disinterested.
Yes.
I think that there are times when that's potentially true. I think there's sometimes when, for me, I'm not sure how to take that process, how to take that mental information and put it into a process.
Yes.
And my flaw, for lack of a better word, is me standing still, waiting for the answer to show up. I'm standing here. When I was a kid, folks would say, if you get lost in the store, stay where you are. So there's a part of me that stays where I am, waiting for this to come back around until I can figure out what's going on.
Or is it the wave that's and you're anyway?
And then possibly
pictures
waiting for it to
come to us
to a stable place so that I can and the communication back about that then gets lost.
Okay.
It can get lost in like, I'm not telling you I'm angry right now because I don't want to say it wrong, and then I'm cussing in anger. It doesn't express when I'm angry. So, but by the time I figure out what it is I want to say, the anger is gone, so the conversation's over. It's kind of that same thing. Does disinterest mean lack of desire to do the process, or does disinterest mean there's a disconnect in what you are talking about? And this goes back to that mutual understanding. Are you supporting me because you want to be supportive, or do you fully understand what I'm asking in this process?
So thank you, honey. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation.
Okay, absolutely.
I'm thinking about this as a wife. What if you are the guy doing the research, but your wife isn't interested? Let's see. So I think I would have you touch on what do you see? What are you witnessing that tells you that they're not interested? So I gave the example earlier about, you can tell when a partner is excited. I will not bring up the dog in this conversation. You can tell when your partner is interested in something, and you can tell when they're not. What I'm learning is that I am disrespectful to your process when I assume what you are exhibiting is something and you have not articulated that. But that's 30 plus years in. Okay. And I'm willing to say it might be that I might need to slow my roll a bit because I might look at, okay, so you said, yeah, go ahead and start looking at the houses, or go ahead and start looking at visas if you're the move abroad process. But I'm still trying to wrap my mind around, you want me to leave my friends, my parents, my kids, my home, my native language, the food that I love. I think when you are the researcher, there's an internal motivation happening inside of you. You have attached something to this move abroad that I think is important. If you haven't done it, to express it to your partner. I am not unwilling to contribute to your joy. And I think in a partnership, in a relationship, that I want to make that clear. If there's, and so we've talked a lot about knowing your why. And I think if you have defined for yourself why this isn't just a passing interest, that it now has deep meaning. And I'm talking to people this week about, look, if this is what's happening, where I live in the US, then I'm ready to do a different thing. If that winds up being your hook, and you anticipate that your partner is in this wave with you, and they're at a different point in the wave. They're in the wave, but you're at the crest, and they're in the trough on the way up, then you may want to sit with your partner. And I love that we learned this when we were doing the financial debt repayment, and financial is sitting knee to knee, eye to eye, and heart to heart, and explaining to your partner why this is important. Why is the move abroad process and moving abroad important to you? Or why is centering travel important to you? More than just saying it's important to me. Like, draw them a picture. And when I say draw them a picture, sometimes it is literally, I saw this and it touched a craving in me. Or we were on this trip and I had this experience and I said, I want more of that in my life. Sitting a minute to articulate that. And I know we're belaboring one aspect of this, but I think it really will fold into these other things. And that is, why are you doing it? Why is it important to you? Especially when you feel an imbalance, when someone has kind of said, oh, I don't mind going along with it, but like, I'm not all in. And I feel like when you express to me, I want to leave HR and I really want to center culinary, I needed a minute to sit and understand why. Now, I have eaten your food for years. I've seen how much joy that it brought me, but why now was kind of a question in my head. This pivot is going to have a lot of meaning to how we live our life, where we live our life, what we're able to do or not able to do. And being able to sit a minute and articulate that should not threaten your dream.
And this may seem simple, but you have to remember, I would encourage you to remember that in your oneness as a couple, you are still two completely different people. And each person's individual outlook on life, expectations about life have to be taken into consideration in a conversation that is a total fruit basket upset. It's difficult enough, at least it is for me, to move from one side of town to the other side of town, because all the things involved in preparing for that cross-town process, that's a financial thing. That's an emotional thing. You could simply pick up everything, throw it in some boxes, get in the car and drive across town. You can make it simplistic, but for it to be reasonable and not frustrating on the other side, there's a bit of cleaning up. There's a bit of downsizing. There's a bit of reevaluating. There is a lot of talking. You're not talking about moving across town. You're not talking about moving across state. You're not talking about moving across the country. You're talking about potentially packing up very little of what you have and taking your whole self away from everything you know. For some people, that sounds like hey, it's just a doing. But for some people, that's a whole process. That's an emotional place. More and more, I've been trying to share with you the importance of understanding energies, spiritual energy, and you're asking a person who may be in their safe energy space, either
Mhm.
by design
Mhm.
or by nature, to take a risk in putting that energy in a place they are unfamiliar with. A vacation does not make for a living.
Yeah.
Neither does a wedding make for a marriage. Just because we had a good time in Timbuktu doesn't mean we need to live in Timbuktu. And so there's a lot of understanding. I say to the ladies all the time, do not walk up to your rational brain, logic brain husbands and say, well, I want to go to Timbuktu because it's beautiful. So is my property. We walk past our grass every day and go, that's a beautiful yard. And I'm not doing anything to that yard but putting some lawnmower on it. But somebody else's lawn being beautiful doesn't make me want to move into their house.
And I think this part of the conversation really rolls into the second part of how to balance individual and shared goals when there is an investment by both people. Like I don't think that it happens immediately. I think what happens is I can decide why this move is in alignment with where I want to be myself and what opportunities it allows for the two of us. And I think the same needs to happen for your partner. Is they have to say, this goal aligns with where I'm going. Sometimes it kind of is a shift, like whether that means I am retiring early or I'm really dialing back on the time I invest in my career ladder. Like it is a pivot, but shared goals and having the balance of this needs to meet my individual needs. If you can't find yourself, if each partner cannot find themselves in a beneficial, in a gain frame of the move abroad process, there's going to be some disappointment. There's going to be a lot more friction to your process.
I have been challenged. I'm just putting myself all on blast today. I have been challenged when you came to me and said, okay, this is what I want. This is where I'm looking. Where do you want to look?
Yeah.
I am of a community of men. David Anderson and I have talked about this. I am of a community of husbands, and I'm specific about that. I am of a community of husbands who say, if you want to build a tent in the backyard, where thou art, there I am also. There's joy in just hanging in the space you hang in. Does that mean then that I have not taken enough time to invest in what's important to me? One of the things that I admire about Lamar of Lamar and Angela, Lamar says, I love RC racing. You don't get a conversation to come up without Lamar talking about RC racing, because that is important. That's his thing. And never, and I mean never, not once do I ever see Angela rolling her eyes, because it's important to him. It's important to her. And when they decided to move abroad, it was almost like that was his one, that and being somewhere stable were like his only criteria. After that, it was the world is our oyster. And what I took from that is, in this conversation of you wanting to go somewhere, in a desire to avoid tipping or disrupting your dream, I have been passive
Mm.
in my approach to where I want to go. Again, to be fair, I cannot look at a magazine, look at a map, look at a video, and choose where I want to go. That does not appeal to me. That means absolutely nothing to me. I see it, I like it, it sparks interest. It does not spark do.
Okay.
Okay.
I had to accept that.
Okay. If I'm looking at someone cooking on a video and they're cooking something that I understand what they're doing, I want to try that. I got a few things in mind right now. But if you're cooking a cake and it's just baking a cake, that does not necessarily make me want to run to the kitchen and bake that cake. It just looks like a nice cake. And if I'm ever at your house, I'll have a slice of it. Okay. That's how my brain works. So my brain, when we landed in Mexico, we were in Mexico. By day 2 and 3 of being in Mexico, I was like,
yeah,
damn Skippy. The doing is important. A pretty face doesn't make you want to chase somebody. Their spirit and their energy means something. But I'm having to recognize that I said to a young man recently, he's 21, do not put away your interest and your pleasures and joys. Invest in them now before you're in a relationship, so that when you're in a relationship, she recognizes that those are important to you, and she's not asking you to sacrifice them because you don't sacrifice them. And I am having to relook and say, what is important to me? So there's some places I'm excited about this series of South American trips we're taking at the end of this year. But one place in particular, I'm looking to go. And the challenge is I can't tell you why.
Okay.
You can come to me and say this and that and trees and planes and flights and goals and travel. And it just sounds nice, which sucks for me because I hate the beautiful, nice context.
Right.
I can't give you a frame of reference I don't like. Because technically, it's right now, it's nothing past expectation.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't gone past, it sounds good. I've always wanted to visit Asia, like really visit Asia. I still don't know if my brain is translating to I want to be 15 hours away.
15.
Well, I'm just saying.
26.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying a day away.
2 days.
And it's not a fear of doing so. It's just that process. What did the Krishan say? Her daughter say that's a bridge too far.
Yeah.
You're asking me to process way deep into something that isn't tangible.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't tangible. I'm just.
I love. So the number 2 was how to balance individual and shared goals. Baby, it's you and me against the world. Like when you can get, when you're yoking yourselves together, even if, sometimes I feel like I'm dragging you and sometimes I feel like you are slowing down for me.
Mm.
You can tell that when you are yoking yourselves to a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so that level of sensitivity and intention is really in that statement of balancing your individual and shared goals, because when you are in a new place,
mm-hmm.
the intention in which you're giving to this process about connecting with your partner, listening to your partner, recognizing their body language, listening to their goals, their desires, their fears, what they are apprehensive about, then when you are in a place where it is the two of you and you all are now experiencing the new process together, that culture shock, sharing tips for handling culture shock, and handling culture shock together. There's when it comes to the holidays, there's certain things this wife is expected to cook, is expected to cook. And I'm saying they may not have that in our country. A culture shock to me means a level of homesickness, a level of loneliness, a level of it's just new on top of new on top of new on top of new, and you almost lose your breath in that newness. But when we have spent time connecting and that we are caring for ourselves, I don't feel alone in my struggle in this new place. For some of us, that may mean we choose a country that doesn't have so many hoops to jump through. Because, hey, if language on top of all that newness is just going to, then maybe together you can choose a country that takes you away, but doesn't, there are plenty of affordable, beautiful places that could meet your needs that also have a English speaking culture if that is your first language. But there's going to be a lot that is unfamiliar, but that we're willing to handle it together. It's hard to, so as a doula, I always say, it's difficult to get a mama to do something in birth that she has not practiced during, before or during her pregnancy. I cannot make her mind see, I want you to squat. And this is the relief you're going to experience if you're on all fours, if we haven't spent time doing that. And I think this process is encouraging you to recognize that we can do this together. Y'all, so prime example, and happy Saturday, Professor LCH. Professor LCH, thank you for joining. Y'all have seen the video the night before we go to Mexico, where I'm standing in my kitchen and I am losing it, literally losing it. And we wanted to share that reality with you, as we have seen others do on their channels, to say, yes, it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's an important thing. But there's a ball of feelings, and that I am trying something new in a way that has risk and vulnerability involved in it. We need to be together. I need to trust that you're going to share with me, and that you can trust that I'm not going to fall apart, and that I can do the same for you.
Correct.
Without saying, oh, he's expressed a struggle and now I can't because he's struggling, and that's gonna, y'all, I'm saying we have counselors right in the chat today that hopefully you are recognizing there are things you can do together,
right?
But you might need some help. You may need a mediator to continue to help that. When I'm hurting, it's hard for me to see your struggle.
And all these tie together, because this may sound like I'm repeating myself. Get my thoughts together. Give me a minute. We have talked to people who have said, we decided to move. Our first concern was the family, and we won't be able to see the family, and then they realized, okay, wait a minute, we don't live near the family. They don't come over here. We don't come over there. We don't see them, and that logic works as a unit. That logic can be derailed if only one person has that point of view. If one person is going, yeah, but from here, I only have to go this far. I said to the couple when we were on Love Park Connection, we had an opportunity to interview on their channel. And I said to Pierre, I said, okay, you do know that technology has made the world smaller. I work with people who I swear they have loneliness issues because they are never not on FaceTime with somebody. My kids, when they moved into teenage years and we gave them computers, would go to sleep on FaceTime or in video chat with people. And I'm just like, at what point do you get to the point where you just are okay missing somebody? I mean, just good God, shut them out. I mean, because I grew up in an era where at 8 o'clock, my phone time, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, in my early teenage years, the phone was taken. Time was out. Somebody was picking up the phone saying, are you still on the phone? Embarrassment. So if you weren't talking to each other, this constant access to each other, we exist in a world where but that is a conversation you share with one another. It also means making those kind of communications with family a standard now. If you aren't talking to your family and those other extended people in your life regularly, you can't decide, well, that's unfair.
It may bring up for you.
Right. It may seem difficult to the non-understanding person why all of a sudden it's important to be hanging out with people you don't hang out with. Why we taking Christmas gifts to people we don't like? I mean, it relates, it compares to that. Yes, we do think differently.
Okay, yes.
But it's just and it's why in the conversation you have to take a deep breath and sit back and say, what am I hearing?
Yeah.
Not what are the words? What am I hearing? And the communication test, the communication task is to turn around to your partner and say, okay, what I understood you to say was, and not you repeat what they said to them. What I understood you to say was A, B, and C. And a lot of times the person will be like, that wasn't what I was saying. I didn't. Sometimes for men, exactly what they said is exactly what they meant, but not always. Yes, Professor LCH, had him go watch it. I just mentioned it to somebody yesterday. It was an honor to do that because in the conversation, we talked about from the beginning, safe doesn't mean the same for me. Safety doesn't mean the same for me as it does for D. Peace doesn't mean the same for me as it does for D. What's the other words that the ladies use a lot? If they're finding peace and there's a whole
ease that
means absolutely nothing to me. That ease is how light does this picking this up? How easy is that getting sent to my house or me going down it? Those terms do not resonate with me almost at all. And it's not that peace isn't important to me. Yeah, but my mama used to say peace in heaven, Yeah, she was there. Okay, there's a completely different approach to understanding when we're using these terms that you're saying, okay, what that means to me is, and it becomes a practice for all the other conversations.
Yeah.
All the other conversations. This is a hard one. This is a hard one. But what we find out is that in so many places, we are silent. Not that we're not talking. There's a whole lot of, Dee and I came to a place where we realized we were talking a lot, but we were silent about a whole lot more.
And I think when you leave together and you are struggling, I think the new environment, the being in a different culture, being it's almost like you're isolated, like it's going to magnify some stressors that you thought we've handled that, we've had those skills. I just feel like the whole point is that I want to recognize when you're struggling, and I want to say that if it is a deal for you, it's a deal for me, and let's work on it together. I guess it's the kind of the one side of the fostering connections, the step 4, the fourth point that we were talking about is, fostering new connections in your new surroundings. It's like, I want to do more external together, and I want to make sure you're still okay with the adjustment. And so all of this is together, that we're checking in together. I'm not just responsible. If I was the researcher and I was the person that initiated it, I don't think that I'm required to dance harder to make sure you're happy. Wow. I think it's my responsibility to say, I know that I initiated this request, but I've asked at every phase and stage, how are you doing? How have you found a place in this process? I want to know what's important in this new place that you want to have, so that when I'm considering, when I'm sketching out this new process, if I'm the researcher, then I'm adding that thing, that accessibility, that I was like, one of the places we've fallen in love with, as I've tried to book travel, I'm just like, it's expensive to get here. It's like, it's more expensive to get there than these other few places that we're going to that we weren't as invested in. I was like, that's kind of a deal breaker, because we want to have a base, and we want to bop around. And I'm just like, this may be a heavy lift.
Right. It may seem like a small thing, but it might be a big deal.
Right.
I also think it's important to say that supportive and agreeable does not necessarily mean we're on the same page. We could get somewhere. Apprehension could be potentially, I'm afraid you're going to have more fun than me. I'm afraid that you're going to excel without me. We're here struggling along together. You've now got this thing you want. And so we go out to do this thing you want, and you excel off to heaven, and I'm still stuck in purgatory in a different house.
So it's interesting you're saying this. So I was in a Facebook group, and a lady asked, where are the men? Where are the husbands? Where are the single men? If so much of this process is, I feel like, gender positive. Either that's because women are intentionally creating community, and men are really operating in a singular, I want to do this process, that it appears that there are more women that are doing this. But my concern is, if we're fostering connections, okay, so I'm taking Rob as an example.
Okay.
Elise knows.
Intentional metamorphosis.
Yes. Elise knows that for Rob to foster connection in his new place, he needs some chess clubs. That's his thing. If he can find some folks to play chess with, he has found his happy place. She has had to either notice that, or has had to ask what's important to you to get to that level of understanding, and to know before we get on the ground or when I'm sharing about this place that I make sure that I add that information, because that's how my husband is going to foster the important connections that then allows him to drop anchor in a new place.
Mhm.
If I can say, I can, for some people, I see in the groups, I want to be able to get back home within 4 hours or less, or there's direct flight from where I am back to my parents, to our children, whatever is a difference maker. I think that is, even if it's not fostering people connections, the things that are important, I can try to make sure that I am building awareness so that you're able to make a connection. That sometimes I think helps somebody feel safe. Like I can get back to where I need to be.
I want to add this statement by Resource Roz, because I think it's going to tie into me responding to you. A lot of this conversation we have in general about partners.
Yeah.
Okay. But
yes,
kids are also a part of this process.
Yes.
Especially if they live in your home. There are people we've talked to who said we told them they were coming, we came, but that was a joint thing. When you are the only one, and I'm going to say this specifically to the ladies. You all have what I think is a very strong community of women who discuss the process to move abroad. I think it might be interesting, if you haven't already, to also discuss why moving abroad is a decision versus simply, as people say, doing better where you are.
Mm-hmm.
What is suggesting to you as women, as Black women in particular, that being an expat will provide you more whatever than shifting some things in the space that you're in? If my children were still here as teens and I wanted to go, and I mean desperately wanted to go, and Dee and the kids were like, I don't feel it. I'm personally, and I don't know if this is the sacrificial, self-talking. I'm trying to then find a way to make the adjustments, either to where I'm providing information that helps them understand this at some point in time, or where there's less people in my house so that then there's two of us having this discussion. Herman will never tell you, and I'm speaking singularly in this situation, Herman will never tell you to leave your partner and go alone. Never. Men to your wives, wives to your husband. You will never hear that from me. We all in together. If you go first and I'm coming, that's a discussion.
Right.
But you go, and if you ever decide
discussion and a timeline.
Absolutely. that for me, and that's a discussion for another day, but that's a big, I take issue with that.
Well, and from a lived experience.
Okay.
We decided never again.
Right.
We would never go.
We have been apart. And even in that, the intention was shorter than the outcome turned out to be. And when we moved to this city, it would have been economically more efficient for Dee to have come alone. And we're an hour and a half from where we were. Okay.
But we made an agreement.
After a very detailed discussion, we agreed. We were packing it up and we were making the move. If we had been unable to come together, what would we have done? Would I have sent her on ahead and tried to make the transition when we could? Probably. And I would have been really, really motivated. And I don't know if we would have been any more or less in a better financial situation than we were coming together.
Would have been, but
I-
that's just my calculations.
Okay.
Resource for us. I want to say, I'm sorry.
No.
for
Go ahead.
interrupting.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
No, some of what we've discussed today is, especially from adult to adult,
Mhm.
Explaining why the move is important for you, why the timeline you're proposing is important to you. And then, looking at the move from your partner's perspective is important to the sell. If I'm going to pitch to you, I'm considering you've talked about this, this, and this, and this is how what I'm proposing either opens the door, creates opportunity, is a way to fast track what you're saying is fulfilling or is a goal to you. For children, what I hear you saying is it really does depend on their age.
Mhm.
When they're younger, I'm going to say every person is going to be resistant to change.
Mhm.
When kids are younger, they want to know that they're safe with you.
Mhm.
So if mommy is going, I'm not going, mommy and daddy are going, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to tell them to leave unless they're at grandma's house. But that's another conversation. Okay. They'll tell you to go on about your business because I'm at grandma's house. I'm at Mima's house. But as they get older, as they are older, if you're talking like 9, 10, 11, they have an awareness and a connection to friends
Mhm.
that has an important component to explaining why, and that they will need some extra support as they're making a transition. But I don't think that if I could have gotten our kids out, if our oldest was 11, our middle would have been about 9.5, 10,
Mhm.
and our youngest would have been about 7, that would have been actually the perfect time to make the transition. It would have been more difficult as we got into the high school years because they're really establishing themselves, their friend circle, and their expectations around, when I'm a senior in high school at this particular school.
Right.
But life happens, and it depends on where you are and what your purpose is. If taking them with you, because there are a lot of channels. We've mentioned Angela and Lamar. Their kids spent their last 2 years of high school in Mexico,
Mhm.
in Querétaro. They went to school. They went to schools that were English speaking, and then made choices about what they would do when it was time for college. So I think at different ages and stages, explaining to your kids that a change is coming, especially when you can get on the same page with your partner, engaging them in the process, giving them information and opportunity to become aware of this new place, visiting that new place, and being able to see what life might be like in that new place. Look, I wasn't opposed to saying our new place is going to have a swimming pool, and our place now doesn't have a swimming pool. And we'll be able to go to the beach, or we'll be able to travel, or we're going to be able to X, Y, and Z that is important to your kids, especially when they're younger,
Mhm.
outside of the teen years, that I feel like the move abroad process actually can be helpful in developing their resiliency skills.
Correct.
We seek the familiar, but when you can be in a supportive environment after getting on the same page as parents, I think it can be helpful to kids.
When a family is a democracy, and I use that term in the broader scope because as parents, there is still some level of decision making that often will be undesirable to our children. when we make those decisions as a family unit, and everyone recognizes what this investment will have for them,
Mm-hmm.
and we are open about the losses
Mm-hmm.
included.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. When we as a couple are not on the same page, then there's a longer conversation to be had.
Yeah.
There are things that we discuss regularly that we have. Sometimes we agree on, but sometimes we disagree on the timeline, the time frames. Sometimes we disagree on the places, the energy to put into it, the effort to put into it. And so, what is drawing me? And what am I and what am I leaving behind that is highly important to me? What are you asking me to sacrifice?
Mm-hmm.
If it's taken me years to create this friend group,
Mm-hmm.
I have had problems creating friends, and I finally have established a friend group. And you're now asking me to not only let my friend group go, but to end up in a place where I got to start at complete zero. I appreciate that there are expat community groups all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean you are naturally going to
Find connection.
find connection. The awkward black nomad is here.
Yeah, I was about to say that was
that is not just a problems outside the country. That's problems inside the country. I have several. If you go to our Black men's playlist, I've had several conversations with gentlemen when we talk about the struggle that we have to create more than just there's our
casual
one guy
connection.
or
Yeah.
casual connection, for a variety of reasons. Some of it is how we interact. Some of it is, age disparities, expectations. Sometimes it's the women in our lives. And so sometimes it's just easier to say I won't than to try to have to figure out how I will or how I will explain it. As well as stereotypes and things that have come out like the passport bros. I don't want to be seen like that.
Yeah.
Our very first men's conversation, I had a whole set of men who were content creators who came on as men talking about the move abroad process. And we were barely in the chat section and people were asking us if we were passport bros. We were all husbands. Okay. After a while, you get tired of fighting the questions and the stigma and the what ifs and the who coulds and sometimes it's easy to say, as several older men say, I go home. Not I don't want to do anything else. Not I don't want to have any other gay. Why are you here? Why are you here without your wife? Where's your wife? But then asking my wife where her husband is when she's being a successful Black woman, and so there's a lot of, and again, there are people on both sides of the scale who have, fed into those. So it makes it hard. These are not unfounded in some format, but in a union of conversation, sometimes, unfortunately, there's delay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most important.
Dream is not deferred. Sometimes it's just delayed. Sometimes it has to adjust. I know people who are headed to countries that they didn't necessarily want to, but it was stay or not go. Stay or go. And wherever they're going, their partner was agreeable to. And sometimes the getting out will facilitate the next place, the next phase. Sometimes it's waiting a little longer until there's a more agreeable situation. And those things are hard to accept. But it's funny how openness can also breed openness.
I have said the Move Abroad process invites couples to engage intentionally, especially when you've been together a while and you've found your rhythm
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
That this process requires the intention of a dating couple. It does. It requires that, that I court you with
Mhm.
the idea of moving abroad.
Mhm.
Okay. Which means I want to be open and honest.
Mhm.
I want to hear you in ways. I want us to be able to celebrate together the milestones of the different decisions that we're making along the way. Each one is important. But like we said, for number 5, maintaining open and regular check-ins for relationship health. Ooh,
This is
that
both
I
in
mean,
and out of country.
it can feel really like, it's like when we do the talking stick method of communication.
Right.
I am talking and you're asking, and then you repeat back to me what you heard me say, and I can either agree, disagree, or reframe so
Mhm.
that you have a clearer understanding. And then you get the talking stick and you share about this one thing.
Mhm.
It feels very laborious. I mean, like, it's like learning to walk again.
Correct.
And took some mediation. On this channel, we believe in therapy. We believe in the positive benefits individually, as for families, for couples, at whatever stage of life that you're in, that you're able to benefit from a good relationship with a counselor that can help you learn new skills and can help you as a moderator. Because we were doing the thing and she was like, did you hear what he said? How did you feel about and I was just like, okay, I came here to talk about this thing over here, but sometimes you do need to slow it down, and to have a neutral third party can be helpful.
I think it's important to say here, Dee, therapy is often associated with things are not right.
Mhm.
Not things are bad. Things are not right. And therefore we need somebody to talk. Sometimes things are good, but there needs to be somebody to help bring more clarity to the process of of communicating.
Or they're in this cycle of, okay, I said that, I don't understand why we're still stuck here.
Right, right. Yeah, I agreed. But when I do this, you didn't do that. It's like, but I agreed. And so sometimes there's a need to get out of the muck and mire. We get bogged down in the things, the stuff, the
therapy gives you that, can help you stand back,
right,
with a little bit of help.
Almost become the bystander, so that you can look in on the process and then say, oh, I think what he's trying to tell you. Oh, wait, he's trying to tell me.
We have shared on this channel about, we were saying we were in this loop for like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
And I was just like, eventually, but if we had gone to a counselor, I think we probably could have cut that time in half. But it was important,
right,
what we learned about ourselves in the process. I needed to do more listening, not just with my ears, but with my heart, as you were saying it, and then giving us a different way, to encouraging you to say it in different ways so that I could understand. So
it is important, I think, to say, as behavioral scientists, as behavioral health workers, that as partners, and we use that word specifically because partnership is different for every couple. As partners, it is important to practice a variety of communication.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, Danica became trained in Reiki, and the nonverbal energy share of those moments has opened the door. I may not say open the door, has created environments that have made some verbal communications a little more fluid. There are times when you should sit in silence together and focus on each other. Put the phones down, put the computers down, shut the stuff down, have a quiet meal. As Dee said, sit knee to knee, literally knees on knees, and hold each other's hand and look at each other and spend some time just being quiet in each other's eyes, in each other's hearts, in each other's space, so that when you talk, there's an unexpected connection that I think is so often lost in the bonds of relationship. We exist in a space, and because we're here together, we're okay. And okay and right are not the same thing. My old man said to me a long time ago, you can be doing a good thing and be still doing the wrong thing. And so take the time to invest in the quiet of communication together, so that when you open your mouths to speak, when you open your hearts to speak, you're both expressive and receptive. This process, especially as a couple, of moving abroad, or even in the process of considering moving abroad, is not a simplistic one. And so it requires a connection and a unity that we would like to encourage you to reinvest in today.
Yep. I want to say we have this discussion pretty regularly on the channel because it's our lived experience. Y'all know we're sharing our move abroad process as a couple. I want to say thank you to Nat and Nat, a channel that we watch that talked about is your partner moving abroad for you? 8 things you must know. That really got us thinking this is a good approach to take on our channel. If there are other aspects of the partner move abroad process that you'd like for us to talk about, we definitely encourage you to take a look at the playlist that we've created. It's actually called Convincing Your Partner or Convincing Your Spouse to Move Abroad. That'll be linked in the description box. Continue the conversation. Continue because the hopes and dreams you have are worth seeing the light of day, and have meaning for you. And if you are in partnership, I think when you're connected to others, it encourages you to share it, to share the importance of it, to see it grow and maybe even shift and change so that it brings along the people that are important to you or that are necessary in the process. We've talked about kids, but y'all, nobody mentioned you might need to sell this to a parent that you may be the primary caregiver for, and having to say, I need you to be okay with this place because the plan is not that I'm going to come back to the US, but that, or Canada or the UK, where most of our viewers are from, but that you may need to come along with me. So I'm going to need you to have a passport. And I'm going to need to check in with you along this process to make sure you continue to understand and see that the life that we know that is important to you, we may choose a place. It's why we got Mexican residency. because we were like, I know my mama's not going to want to go far. And so I know from Mexico City, from Querétaro, from Puerto Vallarta, I can be back in my home state where my folks are from in 4 hours or less. That was important to me. Family unification and having that as a part of, oh, there's the ability once we establish temporary residency, permanent residency, that all I need to do is have my mama get that visa in her passport, and we go to INM and have her join us legally in this new place that can give support, that can allow her to continue to live her independent life with a good community, good health care. So when you're looking at, we have centered the partner move abroad process, but we've given examples for children, we've given, and now we've shared the example of maybe even needing to convince or having the perspective of an adult parent that you may be bringing with you. This conversation isn't over. We'll probably have it again in the next few months into the future. So we are so grateful to have Deborah joining us from Atlanta. Luxury Bucket List, thank you so much for joining. I saw a couple of folks to say that, ooh, that looks, tell me there's a story there. Okay, girl. Yeah. Grace and Opportunity, thank you so much for joining us today. Resource Ross, thank you for entering a conversation. This is how the conversation has built to today. We're going to do it again. Give us some ideas on how you want us to continue to turn this topic. It's important to a lot of folks. And
remember to like this video. You got a few seconds. We're not gone yet. Subscribe to our channel, and please share this video with someone else. Remember, if you're watching us from the future, go into the comment section and drop comments. We always respond to the comments, and we appreciate you as our community. We hope that you have a great week. We'll see you probably a couple of times this week also.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.
Bye for now, everyone.